Okay, hello everyone. So today we have kind of a two-part presentation for you. So I'm going to be presenting the first part along with my guest presenter up here. I'll let him introduce himself in a second. And then the second half is going to be a dress code event where we talk about interviewing dress code and attire and proper attire for the workplace and answer all of your kind of questions about little nuances about how to dress maybe for a career fair versus casual Friday versus all of those different things. So I'm going to turn it over and let you introduce yourself. So we have Transamerica with us today, is who our employer presenter is.
So my name is Matt Griffin. I'm with Transamerica. Transamerica is one of the leading financial services companies in the world for insurance and investments specifically focused on health and wellness. And I'm responsible for our technology recruiting.
All right, and they do have internships and full-time positions, so if you're still looking for next summer, come talk to them when we have our break. Take advantage of this time to kind of network with an employer who's
We have
on
business
campus.
cards up here as well
Yes.
that have a QR code that scans directly to our careers page. So,
Yeah. All right, so why do we interview for jobs? There's a few different reasons. So one reason is to figure out, can you do the job? Do you have the education needed? Do you have the skills? Do you have the background to make you successful in that position? Do you fit? Do you fit in with their team? Do you align with their culture, their values, their mission statement? And then will you do it? Are you just looking for any job just to make money? Or are you actually interested in that position at that company in that industry and actually want to do that job rather than just, can you do it? Do you want to do it? Okay. Steps in the interview process. So the first step is going to be the screening interview. So this is where there's the largest pool of candidates applying. Sometimes hundreds of people are applying for one job. So the purpose of this is really to narrow down the pool, either reject you or move you forward. So this is usually over the phone. Sometimes they're in person. Occasionally we're seeing a lot more video interviews like this now. So that's why we have you do a virtual mock interview, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's pretty much just to see, do you meet those minimum requirements? Can you do the job? You know, just few basic questions to weed out the people who maybe don't have the background to do the job. Anything to add on that first slide or this one?
No.
Okay. So just keep in mind, when you are talking to someone during this round, it's usually someone in HR or a recruiter, kind of that front line, the people you meet at career fairs, that type of person. They, most of the time, are not going to be the decision maker for that role. It's their job to kind of get as many candidates in that are qualified as possible and to get the people who aren't qualified out of that process, and then move the people forward who they think could potentially be a fit and could do the job. So just know that they don't necessarily have the power to make that final decision to hire you, but they do have the power to take you out of the process. All right. So some common questions with this. You're going to be asked this first question in pretty much every interview, every format that you ever do in some way. So tell me about yourself. This could be asked in a really casual way, so don't let it throw you off. If the interviewer is kind of like walking into the room with you, so tell me a little bit about you. That's your first interview question. Even if it's like on the way in, they're kind of making small talk, it's more casually asked. So you have to be ready with that one. We're gonna give you a chance to practice that. What do you do in your current position? That could be something they ask you if you're already in a job or already working. Why do you wanna work for us? Why did you apply to this role? They might ask you that. Will you require relocation? They're kind of getting a sense for, okay, is this someone that we would have to move, or are they going to be here for the summer? Do they have housing for the summer if it's an internship? That kind of thing. And then sometimes they'll ask about salary in that first question or in that first interview. So keep it simple. Please do not ramble in a phone interview. As soon as you answer the question, you can be done talking. So even if there's kind of a pause, or you answer the question and you don't hear them say anything necessarily, they're probably just writing notes and trying to jot down what you said before moving on to the next question. So don't feel like you have to keep talking, okay? Because at that point, you might just ramble and say things that aren't relevant and end up deterring from making yourself look good in that situation. Anything to add?
Definitely don't ramble, but be thorough. Answer the questions completely and thoroughly.
That's a great point too. So answer the questions completely. This is just an overall interview tip. Make sure that if it's a multi-part question, or you feel like, okay, I heard the first part, but I missed that second part, or you're answering the question and you kind of forget what the original question was or what else they asked, don't be afraid to ask them to repeat it. That's totally fine to do. You can say, I'm not sure if I answered that question completely. Can you repeat the second part for me? Or something like that. They will appreciate it. That's not odd. You can totally do that. That's allowed. If you're doing it for every question, that might be too much. But if it's one of the longer ones, that's okay. All right. So this tell me about yourself question. This answer should be about a minute long. Okay. You don't need to go into your entire background and talk about your family and all of that kind of stuff. If it's relevant, then yes, add that in. If you're from a location where the company's located, or you're going back home for the summer and that's where the company's located and you're interviewing with them for an internship, definitely mention that that's where you're from. But you don't have to give them your entire history. So practice this one, bullet point it out. You don't want to sound too rehearsed, but you want to be prepared. So this is something that could potentially be similar to your elevator pitch, which you wrote a few weeks ago in this class. So talking about your past, present, future, your specific skills that are relevant to that role. And then, so what I'm going to have you all do, you picked up a job description on your way in the little half sheet of paper. If you did not get one, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring it around. Okay, so once you get one of these, look it over, look for the keywords and the key skills that they're looking for in a candidate, and kind of pick out the things that you think you could add in to your elevator pitch or your tell me about yourself, and then add those little pieces in. So you should, I don't know if you might not still have that sheet of paper that we practiced your pitch on before, or that you wrote your LinkedIn summary on before, but hopefully you remember little pieces of it. So think about how you could work some of those skills in there. And then I want you to deliver that pitch or that tell me about yourself to someone nearby you, so one of your classmates. When you're listening to someone else's answer, give some feedback. Think about whether or not they actually tailored their answer to the role. And this is a real job description that's in Pioneer Careers right now. I took the company name out and tweaked a couple things, but this is something that you might actually see in our system. So give one piece of positive feedback, one area where they could maybe improve that tell me about yourself answer. So go ahead and do that. Take a second to read it over yourself, and then when you're ready, turn to someone nearby and share your answers. Okay, let's bring it back in. We're going to move on. Hopefully you got some good feedback from your peers and served as a resource to one another. Okay, so the next stage in the interview process is usually kind of that informational or behavioral question stage. So this is going to be a smaller pool of candidates, the people that they've identified as qualified for the job, so the people who can do the job. So this is where they're really going to try to be focusing on, can you do what your resume says? Can we work with you? Are you someone that we would want on our team, personality-wise and culture fit-wise? So this is usually, it could be video, or usually it's in person at this point. But if it's like far away and they want to do a Skype or Zoom meeting, they might do that. This could be a position supervisor, a group of people, like a team you'd be working with, your colleagues, other stakeholders, and they're really assessing, can you build a relationship and can you validate and tell stories around the things on your resume and really talk about your experience in that way. All right, I'm going to go through these and I'll turn it over to you, Matt. So common questions. Give us an example of a time when blank. Tell me about a time when you did this. Talk about an experience or your experience with blank. So for these, they're looking for specific stories. You're going to get some of these questions in your video mock interview assignment if you're in 2099. So we want to hear a specific story, a specific time. A lot of people fall into the trap of saying, okay, tell me about a time when you showed leadership. Well, usually I'm the leader. I pretty much always play that role, and my peers just kind of look up to me in that way. That's not a specific story, okay? So if you're speaking in general, that's fine, but then go into a story about when you showed leadership. Maybe it was a specific project or something that you did on your sports team or in a club you're in or at the part-time job where you trained 5 new employees. So we want to hear a specific story around that. The strategy with this stage is to be yourself and utilize your prep work, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Anything to add to this?
So, no, all great points. Always be yourself. Also confidence, just be confident. Make a lot of eye contact. And as I think relationships and communication are going to be far more important than any technical skill you may have. So just really focus on building those relationships. In addition to using real life examples, you want to make sure to state whatever the problem was, state the solution you guys came to, any obstacles that may have popped up, how you overcame them. That's all very important.
Great. Yeah, as far as this relationship building goes, they know they want to hire a person. They want to hire someone that's likable, that can talk with them. So this relationship building piece, you might have to make some small talk when you're like walking to the interviewer's office, or when you're sitting in the waiting room and the person, like the receptionist or the office manager, is there and they're checking you in, making some small talk with that person. So just know that don't get too focused in on just answering the questions correctly. They're looking for a well-rounded, holistic person too. So what I would recommend doing, and we'll talk about this later too, is looking up your interviewers on LinkedIn ahead of time. So do a little research on them. If they went to DU, or you went to the same high school, or you're from the same town, or they worked their way up from a job that you're interested in, and so to get some ideas of how long they've been at the company and kind of what their background is, because that'll help you with that small talk piece. Okay, so Matt started talking about this part of things. So when you're telling those stories, try to put them in this format. The STAR technique, it's an easy thing to remember. So the situation you were in, the task that you were supposed to be doing, or the problem at hand, your action. So if you were on a team, that's great. You can talk about what your team did, but what was your individual action that you played in that role? And then the result, or the outcome. A lot of people will stay up in this top range and just tell stories on stories on stories, and you're like, okay, but what did you learn? Or what was the outcome? Did you win? Did you lose? Did you get an A? So we want to really hear this last part. That's what you should focus on. So an example might be, I was working at Starbucks in my job, and the question could be a time you dealt with a difficult customer or dealt with conflict. And you can say the situation was this customer was not satisfied with their drink, and I had to remake it. And the action that I took was that I apologized, and I did this, and I went and remade it, and I, discounted their next drink, or whatever it was. And then the result was that the customer was really happy. They came back the next day. We didn't end up losing that customer, and everything turned out really well. Or maybe it's a time that you failed. That's another question that you might get, or a question about a time that things didn't go right. So in that case, you wouldn't be like, and everything ended up nice and rosy and I got an A. In that case, you might say, and I learned that I won't do that again. And here's the skill that I gained, or here's what I took away from that I now apply when I'm in those situations in the future. So this can look a lot of different ways, but just know you want to come up with some stories ahead of time from your experiences that could fit for those different types of questions. Okay, so you have a handout with your mock interview assignment on it, hopefully. On that other side are the questions that you're going to be asked in that video mock interview. So you get a little cheat sheet ahead of time. There's a couple of these behavioral questions on there. It's like, tell me about a time that I think you dealt with conflict, or what are them on? Tell me about a time that you went above and beyond expectations might be one of them. So pick one of those and write out your answer in that STAR technique. So situation, task, action, result. And then once you've done that, share with a partner, hopefully someone that you didn't work with last time. And maybe you haven't met before in this class. But once you've written that down, share your answer with a partner. And again, when you're listening to that other person's answer, think about the result piece. If they don't quite get to that, or if you're not hearing what that outcome was, or what they learned, or the skill they gained, give a little bit of feedback and help them come up with that. All right, go ahead and write down your answer. I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. Okay, let's wrap it up and come back in. All right, so hopefully you got some good feedback on that one too, and got a little chance to practice, because that's going to be one of your questions that you're asked on the assignment. All right, so final round, usually about 3 to 5 people move to this final decisional round. So these are people that they could actually see in the role, and now they're just trying to figure out, okay, who would be the best one. So this is usually in person. This is usually the hiring manager, the decision maker. It might be another team of people or multiple interviewers. This is to either hire you or not hire you, basically. So remember to talk about not only your background and everything like that, but what can you offer the company? So how are you going to be an asset to them and solve problems for them in some way? So anything to add on that piece? All right. So common questions. Again, you might get some of those behavioral questions. Describe a situation. What challenges do you expect to face in this role? You might get some of those in this round because they're really trying to narrow down who would be the best person out of our 3 to 5 people. I want to talk about this why should we hire you question. It's really tempting in interviews when you're telling stories or when you get a question like this to accidentally start kind of speaking poorly about other people. So if they ask, did you have a conflict with someone, focusing on that person and all the things they did wrong. Try not to do that. Yes, you can mention that you had a conflict or whatever it might be, but focus on your actions. And so with this question, you want to focus on why should we hire you, but try not to necessarily put down other people. Just talk about your strengths. And so we see a spectrum on this. We see people who just talk about their skill set and how qualified they are, and they go down the list and they say, look, I can do all of these things, you should hire me. Then we have people on the other side who talk about how passionate they are for the industry and this is their dream company and they've always wanted to work here. That's great too. Try to find somewhere in the middle. So try to touch on not only why you're qualified or why you have the skill set, but why you are motivated to do that job and why you really want to be there. So use, like I said, results-oriented accomplishments. Be specific with your stories. Use a variety of examples. So that's something we haven't touched on yet. Sometimes when we do mock interviews or when I was interviewing as a recruiter, we would hear people just tell the same story over and over again or talk about like the same class project or the same internship over and over and over again. And granted, it might fit for multiple things, but you want to vary that to show that you have a wide variety of experiences in your background. So you might talk about a class project, then you might talk about a volunteer experience you had, then you might talk about your experience like coaching little kids or whatever your background is. So try to show that you've got other things going on rather than just that one class project or whatever it is. Anything to add?
Yeah, you nailed it. Variety is key. At the end of the day, when you leave these people, you really want to make them feel like if we don't hire this person, that they're going to be missing out. So however you can find that happy medium, as you mentioned.
I like that. Okay. How to prepare. So the preparation piece is where a lot of people end up kind of digging themselves into a hole with interviews. Is the person asks, why do you want to work here? And there's kind of a blank stare because you don't know, you didn't do the research. So this stuff is really important. Knowing the company's purpose, their mission, their values, what they do, who their competitors are, what are the news stories out there about them, what do they stand for, what's their culture like, do they speak a different language in their office, how big are they? All of that stuff is things that you should know ahead of time. Even sometimes before applying to the job, you might know some of this stuff, just when you're deciding whether or not you'd want to work there. But then you've really got to dig in once you get into the interview. Look up your interviewers, like we talked before, their academic background, their current position, how it's related to the job. So a good tip with this, if you are kind of in that first stage of interviewing and you're talking to the recruiter or the person from HR, asking them really detailed, specific information about a role as an investment banker or someone that's in that role, they're not going to be able to answer that as well as the people that you talk with later on in the process who are actually in that department, in that role. So just think about who you're talking to when you are asking those questions and when you're in the interview and kind of what their background might be. Know how to pronounce their name and maybe their gender that they prefer. You can sometimes get that on LinkedIn, or some people put in their email signature. Assess how your skills and your character traits align with the role. So do some self-reflection. If you're not sure of your strengths and your weaknesses, talk to the people around you. Ask your friends, ask your family, the people who know you the best, because they're going to be able to say, this is the kind of thing that I come to you for. This is what you're going to be able to bring to a company, even if you can't internally see that yourself. So when you're talking about strengths and weaknesses, while we're on that subject, strengths, try to give an example. So instead of just saying, I am a great team player, anyone can say that, right? But saying, I'm a great team player, for example, I always, am the first one to group meetings and I pick up the slack of anyone that maybe didn't do their part. Or, I'm really organized. For example, I'm the one who does all the shift scheduling at my part-time job, and so I have to be really on top of that. So just telling a quick little example of how that strength shows up in your day-to-day life is important. For weaknesses, talk about how you're working on it. Talk about, yes, I have this weakness. It's true. I own it. It's something that's true about me, and it's been a problem, but now I'm getting better at it because I'm doing this. So they want people who are self-aware, but people who are also coachable and getting better at things. Anything to add?
Yeah, these are all really good points. Just to start at the top, Google is your friend. I mean, Google News, the company name, pull up any articles, new locations opening, new product lines driving business. That they're going to be really impressed if you bring that up during the interview. Researching your interviews, LinkedIn is a great, really, really good tool. See if you have any mutual connections, maybe that work at other companies. Reach out to them, ask them about the people that you're interviewing with, any piece of information. Also, going back to building that relationship, see what college they went to. Bring up the college team or what, something like that. But definitely do the research. Yep, and that's about it.
Thank you. And then knowing your resume is another important thing. So they might ask you, hey, walk me through your resume. Be able to talk about anything that you put on that resume, okay? Anything on the resume is fair game for them to ask you in an interview, and I would say anything on your LinkedIn too, because that's kind of, a lot of recruiters will look at that before you come in. So if you have an experience on there that you maybe weren't super involved in, you didn't do a whole lot, maybe don't include it, because you won't be able to talk too much about it in your interview. And then anticipate reasons that you might not get the job. Think about, so when you're looking at the job description, no one is going to fit every single qualification. But pick the ones, figure out the ones that you might not quite have as much experience in. Anticipate the employer maybe asking you a question about that, and then think about, okay, how would I explain how I'm going to learn how to do that? Or how I'm going to take the initiative to be better at that. Even though I haven't done it in the past, I'm going to be a quick learner and get that skill, whatever it might be. Okay, so think about employer objections beforehand too. Preparing your notes. These are things you want to write out ahead of time. Bullet point out your tell me about yourself. I would not write it in a complete paragraph, because if you're on a phone interview and you have that in front of you, you want to not sound like you're reading from a script. Okay, so if it's bullet pointed out, that'll be just like short little things to remind you of what you want to say. Accomplishment statements, so those STAR technique stories, even if it's not necessarily an accomplishment, but just an example of a time you learned something, or an example of a mistake or conflict or leadership, whatever it might be, write those out ahead of time, practice them. Varied examples, we talked about that, and then a list of questions for the employer. We'll talk about that too in a little bit, but you should always, always ask questions at the end of any interview, unless it's one like our assignment where you're recording yourself and then submitting it and there's nobody on the other side. That one's a little bit tougher to ask questions because there's nobody on the other side. But otherwise, you should always have questions for them at the end. Anything?
And I was going to say, maybe don't even wait till the end. If you're going through something, you have a question, bring it up. We definitely like to hear questions being asked. If you don't answer them, you seem like you're not engaged and not interested.
Right, yeah. So having that preparation ahead of time too. Okay, phone interview logistics. I know that this one isn't super popular anymore, but if you can use a landline, go ahead and do that. Obviously, I know that that's not always possible for everybody. So if it's possible, do that. If not, make sure you have really good service wherever you are. Lay all your documents out on the table in front of you. So your resume, the questions for the employer, the things that you practice, your answers to the questions, examples you want to be able to talk about, have all of those in front of you. Call in early if you're the one calling. Most of the time for a phone interview, they're calling you. But if you happen to be calling them, call right on time or even like a minute early. If you're a few minutes late or if you miss their call and they call you right on time, that doesn't look so great. Avoid shuffling papers or typing or doing anything in the background. Find a quiet space. So you can always try to use a study room, or you could use our recruiting suite if it's open. Come talk to us about that. That's always an option. Make sure there's no distractions like your roommate's dog barking or anything like that. Speak at a normal volume and pace. So a lot of people when they go into interviews, they get really nervous and they start to talk really fast because they just wanted to get it over with. Don't do that. Take a breath, speak at a normal pace. It might feel like you're talking kind of slow. And then make sure they can hear you, okay? So don't talk too quietly, and always smile. I know that that sounds weird because you're on the phone, but especially, and then in these video interviews too, it's important, smile to show enthusiasm, because you can hear it through the phone when someone's smiling, and you can see it on that video interview. And it's a lot harder to portray enthusiasm when you're not in person with someone, because they can't see your body language. It's a lot harder to read somebody, so focus more on that for video and phone interviews. Allow for verbal pauses, like we said. Don't feel like you have to keep talking. If they're writing notes and you're like, it's quiet, I don't really know what to do, just let them finish their notes and they'll ask the next question when they're ready. I feel like I missed something. Anything to add?
I like to say that the 3 C's, calm, collected, and confident. So.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so, one thing that I was gonna add. If you don't have if your voicemail isn't set up, or it's full, or it doesn't have like a professional tone to it, I know some of you just have like, the number is not available this time. That's fine, but don't have any like crazy music or weird voicemail things happening, because especially when you're job searching or internship searching, employers are going to be calling you and they'll get that voicemail. So just make sure it's professional. Okay, video interview logistics. Confirm the video software and create an account if you need to ahead of time. One thing that I was going to say with phone and with video. Make sure that if you can't hear them or you feel like they can't hear you, you say something. Don't feel like, oh gosh, I'm nervous, I don't want to say anything, I don't want them to think that I'm weird, that I can't hear them or hear their questions. That's it. Make sure everything's working okay, because they're going to be appreciative on their side, because maybe they can't hear you either, and you don't want it to throw you off during your interview, right? You want everything to just go smoothly. It's stressful enough, so make sure that that's all good to go. If you can't hear them right away, maybe you hang up and call back or whatever it is. So, all right, other things with video interviews. Make sure the background, including for your assignment, is professional and free from too many distractions. We understand like you're going to have maybe like a shelf with some books in the background or whatever, but just make sure it looks nice and professional and it's not some like poster that you maybe wouldn't want them to see. Lay out all documents on a table in front of you. So again, you can have things in front of you for that video interview, but just make sure you're not doing this the whole time. And all they see is like the top of your head and you're looking down, okay? Because then they'll be able to tell that you're reading. Dress professionally from head to toe. I've heard stories about interviewers making students stand up, and the student was in sweatpants and a suit jacket. So I don't think everyone will make you do that, but just in case, can't be too careful. And then log on early or right on time for that video interview if there's a time. You can use earbuds. That's not an odd thing. So if you need to use earbuds or headphones to hear them a little bit better, that's not unusual. You can explain it to them too if you feel like you want to. And then avoid shuffling papers. Once again, look at the camera. So you've all been on a video call or FaceTime or something, Skype with somebody where they're not looking at the camera and they're looking at the screen or looking at something else. It's a lot less engaging to be talking with someone when they're not looking directly at that camera. So it's tempting to look at yourself on the screen, but try to either point like a sticky note right at the camera to remind yourself, or maybe put a piece of paper in front of your computer screen so that you're not tempted to look there. Just a little tip about that. Anything to add?
Yeah, one thing to add, everybody's late sometimes, stuff happens. If you're going to be late, we all have phones. Text or email the recruiter or something saying, hey, I'm going to be late. Do you want to reschedule this? Because time is valuable and it'll show that you care, instead of dialing in 3 minutes late. 3 minutes late, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it can be a big deal.
Yeah, great. Okay, so your mock interview assignment, it's all spelled out on that other side of the paper. So I'm not going to read that whole thing to you because there's a lot on there, but it's just a step-by-step process. You're going to utilize Big Interview to do that. At the end, you're going to get some feedback from an employer or an alum or a staff member. We highly recommend sending a thank you email afterwards. Once you get your feedback, they have the option to provide their email with you. If they don't provide it, then no worries. But if they provide you contact information, maybe you send a thank you, maybe you reach out for an informational meeting if it's someone that you look up and you're like, oh, their job is cool, I want to talk to them. Because they're volunteering, they want to help you, they want to talk with you. So always send that thank you if they provide it. But yeah, so it's all outlined right on there. What you'll do is answer all of the questions, you'll make them all public, not really public so we can see it, and then take that URL and submit it to Canvas. Make sure you do that last step, because we've had people in the past who didn't submit it to Canvas, so we have no idea that you did the assignment. So make sure you submit that piece of it. We are not evaluating you necessarily on how well you interview, because I know this is like maybe one of the first interviews that you guys have ever done, maybe the first video interview especially. We want you to take it seriously. The interviewers will let us know if you just upload like silly stuff and don't actually take the project seriously, but you're gonna get credit if you do it. Another thing that we might send it back to you if we can't hear you or if the video doesn't work, so just double check that stuff is all working too. Okay, on-site interview logistics. So confirm the location, make sure you know how to get there, that you know where you're gonna park if you're driving, and allow enough time for that. So maybe you practice your route when you're going there. So just be aware of all of that stuff ahead of time, because you don't want, a traffic jam or something to be what stands in the way of you getting a job. And if you are stuck in traffic, there's a weird accident and it's not usually busy, call the company or email or whatever you need to do. Probably, hopefully call so you're not emailing on the road. But just let them know that you're running a little bit late and what the situation is. They're usually understanding that things happen. Bring your resume, bring maybe the job description or references or a cover letter if those were part of your application. Maybe if you're going into more of a creative role, they want to see a portfolio of your work or projects you've done. Bring your questions for the employer, which we'll talk about, and then a notebook and a pen to take notes. Make sure that you bring that stuff. Lay out your clothes the day before. We'll talk more about the actual attire in a little bit and what you should wear, but you don't want to go to grab your suit the morning of and realize like, oh my gosh, I forgot to get this dry cleaned, and I know that I like spilled on myself last time I wore this, and then I forgot to take it in, and now I'm stuck, and I got to call a friend and borrow their suit jacket and blah, 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 blah. Don't put that stress on yourself, okay? Look the day before or the week before and make sure everything's good to go. Lay it all out, make sure it's ironed, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. I wouldn't get there any earlier than that, because then it puts some pressure on your interviewer. So arrive 10 to 15 minutes early, and then treat everyone as though they are an interviewer. So by the time, or from the moment that you're kind of pulling in or you're near the company, you are on. You are on. That is your interviewer, because you never know who you're parking next to or who you cut off on your way into the parking lot. That could be your future boss, right? So be really nice to everyone that you encounter on the way in, the person checking you in for the interview, all of that kind of stuff. When I was recruiting, after an interview, I would go out to our front desk person and I would ask her, hey, were they nice to you? How were they? Because if they were really rude or not super friendly or like didn't give her the time of day, that factors in, because that tells me like, oh, they were just putting on a show for me. That's not really what they're like. So treat everyone you encounter when you're on that company's campus or the organization's area, treat everyone like that could be an interviewer. Anything to add?
The only thing to add is the 10 to 15 minutes early, and I assume you mean this, is get there to the person you need to check in 10 to 15 minutes early, not to the building or not to the parking lot, because I mean, it just takes time to get all that done, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, questions for the employer. Here's the myth. Employers pay more attention to your responses than your questions. Honestly, asking questions demonstrates your aptitude for absorbing the information they're giving you, because at the end, like if you're asking a question and they're answering it, and then you just kind of sit there and say, oh, okay, and don't ask any follow-up questions or don't write anything down, it's kind of saying, okay, I asked you a question, but I don't really care how you answered it. So they want you to ask questions. They want you to come prepared with some questions. So things that you can ask, this is just some ideas, you might have your own. You could say something like, I read blank on your website, or I saw blank in the job description. Can you tell me more about that? Talk to me more about that initiative, that new project your company's working on. Or I saw in the job description that, I might need to be working with a marketing department sometimes. What does that look like? How often will I be working with that team? It shows that you did some research ahead of time. It doesn't take that long to Google the company and look that kind of stuff up. You might ask them, what concerns or questions do you have about my fit for this role? And in that case, if you decide to ask something like that and they give you an answer, that's your opportunity to say, oh, you're concerned about my experience with Excel. Well, don't worry, because before I start this internship, I'm going to be taking another class in it, so I'm going to be even better at Excel. So that's your chance to say, I understand that you're worried about it. Here's how I'm going to alleviate that worry. How would you define or measure success in this role? How am I evaluated? What character traits does the ideal candidate for this job possess? One thing that I like to ask in interviews is, I looked at the job description, I looked at your website. I'd love to know, what are you looking for in this position that's maybe not in the job description? Because that gives them a chance to say, oh, well, around here we love to have fun. We need someone with a sense of humor. And maybe that's not written in there, but that's good information to have. In this position, how can I reduce my supervisor's workload, contribute to this team? One question or a couple questions that it's okay to ask them, but they're a little bit too general and a little bit not creative. What does the day-to-day look like? Or what does this job entail? Because a lot of that you can pull from the job description. You could ask more detail on it, but if you just ask, what does this job entail on a day-to-day basis? They're just gonna point to the job description and say it's right here. Another thing is that's a little bit cliche, unless you're being specific, is what do you like about working here? If you say something like, I saw that you've moved up 3 different roles, 3 different times in this organization, what's kept you around so long? That's different. Okay, so asking any question is good, but if you can be really specific with them or be a little more creative, that's even better. Anything about questions?
Yeah, just remember you're interviewing the company as well. It's not just a one-sided interview. You want to make sure it's a right fit for your values and where you're trying to align. So just keep that in mind. And then to elaborate on the what concerns or questions, my favorite question at the end is, are there any reservations for bringing on, myself for this role? That's a good area to elaborate on.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing to ask, I always forget this one. What are the next steps? What are the next steps in the hiring process, or when can I expect to hear from you next? Because then you leave knowing, okay, if I don't hear from them in 2 weeks, it's okay because they're still interviewing. And it holds them accountable too, to say, okay, we told them that we'd get back to them by this Friday, so we really need to get back to this candidate. So always kind of have an understanding of what the next steps in the process are, or the timeline. All right, discussing salary. Do not bring up salary before the interviewer does, unless it's like you're getting the offer letter, they're talking with you about the position, and they still haven't brought up salary, which hopefully they have, but if they haven't, that's when you should ask about it. Do your research on this. So it's a little different for internships sometimes, but especially when you're out there looking for full-time jobs. PayScale, Glassdoor.com, Salary.com. There's a ton of information out there. We have information on salaries from past DU graduates. So come talk to us about that kind of thing. But yeah, if they haven't brought it up yet, I wouldn't try to bring it up in like the first interview, because it kind of comes across as that's the only reason that you really want to talk to them, is you're just doing it for the money. Anything to add there?
Yeah, when they ask, the worst answer you can say is, I don't know. So be somewhat educated, and then if they ask what you want, ask for at least $15,000 over. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, give a range if it's that full-time position that's about $15,000. Yeah. Okay, follow up with a thank you. After every interview, follow up with a thank you. I know, again, it's hard with these. Like if you have a video mock interview with a company and you're like, I don't even know who's really on the other side, that might be a little different. But after your phone interviews, after your in-person interviews, after each round, send thank yous. These can be email, they can be written. If you decide to do a handwritten note and mail it in, one thing that I like to do, and you don't have to do this, but if I know that they're trying to make quick decisions, but I want to write out an actual handwritten note, I'll send them a quick email after the interview saying, hey, thank you so much for your time, but watch for my thank you note in the actual mail, so that they know it's coming. And you can kind of feel that out with the company too, if it's like a pretty forward-thinking young company and most of the people you were communicating with through email's probably fine, but if you feel like it's a pretty traditional person or a traditional company and they really want to see a handwritten thank you, that might set you apart. So you can kind of use your best judgment there. In these thank yous, express pleasure for meeting them, show gratitude that they took the time to talk with you, reinforced interest in that position, emphasize something specific from your interview. So make sure it's not just like a form thank you. If you talked with multiple people, try to tailor your thank yous. So like if I was interviewing with Matt and then I interviewed with Amanda in like the same interview suite, or I back-to-back interviewed with both of them, and Matt talked to me more about his time with the company and why he loves it there, and Amanda talked with me more about how I was going to be working with the marketing department sometimes, I would mention those two different things in my thank you notes to them, because they compile all of that back into your candidate file, and then if it looks exactly the same, that's kind of a red flag. It's good that you wrote one, but definitely tailor it. And then establish the next point of contact if you didn't already. Anything to add?
Yeah, don't forget the little people. Whoever scheduled your interviews and maybe the receptionist, believe it or not, everybody talks in an office environment, and the more good impressions you leave, the better off your chances of getting that job.
All right. Okay, so we are going to take a quick 5 to 10 minute break. This is your chance to talk to our guest employers. So network with them, come talk to them about their potential opportunities that they might have for you, about what they do. Take advantage of this time to practice that tell me about yourself. Practice your elevator pitch. Use this time to your advantage. So take a quick 5 to 10 minute break to stretch your legs, and then we're going to get into the second half of this, which includes a panel. So you won't have to listen to me talk anymore. All right, go ahead.
Yay. Hello, I'm Jess Neumann. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Innovation here at DU. And this is actually my 3rd year doing this event, and I really love it because I love talking about clothes, and I did my research on clothing and blogging, and it's just a really great opportunity. Before we get started, I just wanted to give some thanks to Karen and Jen and Tony and Daniels and the Undergraduate Programs Office and our lovely and esteemed panelists right here. So, what is the dress code? We are going to be talking about, for the next maybe 45 minutes or so, how to navigate dressing and styling as you embark on your professional careers, whether that's an internship or your first job after graduation. When I think back to what my experience was when I was first starting out, I really wish I'd had a little more guidance. I thought I knew how to be fashionable and professional at the same time, and I kind of shudder when I think about what I actually wore to the office on occasion. So I'm hoping that this will give you some helpful hints and ideas on how to navigate this yourselves. So to start, we're going to discuss a couple of scenarios that you will likely encounter in the workplace, and then we'll go into a Q&A with our panelists. And I just want to invite the panelists, as we're going through this, if you want to interject, please do. I don't mind being interrupted. Nina, except now. You're fine. So to start off, I have just a couple of notes I like to throw out there. I actually, I do struggle a little bit with this event because I'm not a business person. I don't work in finance or the business sector. I'm in higher ed. I tend to err on the side of more creative, but I understand how to dress for specific audiences. So I'm hoping that you don't have to follow all of this to a T, but if you can at least take some of these and incorporate them into what you're doing, I think it will be helpful. I firmly believe in being authentic, so I think you must consider who your audience is, but you can still be yourself. You just have to understand where the lines are. Do what makes you comfortable when it comes to religious or traditional attire. I can't stress that enough. And then one other just little note about tattoos or piercings. I don't know if any of you have them. Generally, you probably don't want facial piercings if you're going in for an interview or maybe your first day on the job or meeting with a big client, unless that is the cultural norm at whatever your workplace is. Hello, Nina. Sorry. No, you're fine. Oh, no, there you go. Also, tattoos. I actually have multiple tattoos in visible places. I have them on my arms, but I know to cover them up if I'm giving a presentation or if I'm meeting with an administrator or I'm not sure how someone will take them. So just keep those types of things in mind. I know they're common sense, but I think sometimes we forget about them, so just try to remember that. first impressions are really powerful. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this, but it's something like in the first 5 or 7 seconds of someone meeting you, they make a judgment call on who you are based on your appearance. And I hate to admit it, but it's true. So if you show up to an interview and you're unkempt, or you have on kind of a weird baggy suit, they're going to remember that. And you want to be remembered for yourself, like who you are, how you present yourself, and your skill sets, and not the really bad fashion choice you made. So always be put together. Have your outfit ironed or pressed, and pay attention to details. And that's what we're going to focus on a lot here, is those little tiny details that you don't always think about, but will actually go a long way. Also, understand your body type and appropriate sizing. And my last piece of advice is really just kind of think of it as self-confidence is the most important thing you can bring into one of these spaces. So, you know, be yourself, rock it, and don't it. So now we're going to do some polls, just because I want to kind of gauge what all of you know about fashion and dress and whatnot. So Slido.com, that's your access code Q756. And just let me know when you've logged in if you can. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to do, the next slide I'm going to show you has 2 different sets of photos. So we are going to do it photo by, or set by set. So for this first poll, please choose which one is the most appropriate for an interview. You guys are pretty great, because 97% of you said it was the first one and not the second. Just shout out, why would you choose this one over this one? Okay, great. Anything else? Excellent. This woman, she's wearing a suit, but it's very trendy. This is a fashion style, street style photography shot. So, I mean, I think she looks pretty cool. But if you're going to a conservative firm for an interview, they're probably not going to appreciate that the way someone in a New York City fashion house will. What about this is good? Do I need to give you more candy? You just shout it out. No need to. Absolutely. She's got a neutral palette, which is great, but she's got this fun pop in her shoes, that leopard print. No one has seen these before. You know, it's well fitted. It's not baggy. I mean, it's tailored within an inch of perfection. She's got a classic bag. You know, not too many flashy accessories. So again, you've got something that looks pretty classic versus slightly more trendy. So now let's do the second poll. Would you choose 1 or number 2 for an interview? Okay, so looks like 93% of you chose number 2, and 8% chose number 1. So why wouldn't you choose number 1? Okay. Okay. Yes. So those are the 3 things I wanted you to get out of this. I mean, at first glance, you're like, oh, okay, that's not so bad. But depending on your industry, coming in a burgundy suit may not be the best idea. Also, that ankle length versus this ankle length, one's going to look a little more professional, especially for an interview, and you don't know what the culture or the place is like. They're both wearing ties. I mean, they both look very respectable. But again, it's these little things that you maybe wouldn't pick up on, like at just a quick, but it's going to stick with people. So when you are doing, if you're dressing for your interview, the goal is ultimately to look professional. The fit is really, really important. That's kind of a key takeaway. You can always ask a salesperson if you're not sure. Try everything on before you go. Don't wait till the morning of your interview to try your outfit on. Bad idea. Also, I advise you to err on the side of conservative, simply because you don't know who you're going to be interviewing with in most cases, and you just want to, you know, again, just not offend anyone with your fashion choices. One thing I will say is I will never wear a suit. So even if I were to interview for a job, I am not going to show up in a suit. It's just not who I am. I also work in higher ed, so I have that kind of advantage. But I would wear something like this to an interview. I think I still look professional. and it's kind of a neutral palette, but I'm not going to go in and offend anybody, and I'll cover my tattoos. One thing to remember is that your interviews, they're gonna vary by industry type, company type. There's a lot of little details to remember. When it comes to hygiene and grooming, your perfume, cologne, aftershave, you don't want to leave a scent lingering because it's going to be really distracting in an interview. So I think of the elevator test. If you get into an elevator, you ride for a few floors, and you get out and the people can still smell you, you have on too much. Makeup, if you choose to wear it, again, I would go more simple than a smoky eye for a daytime interview. Probably not the right audience. If you have facial hair, keep it neat. Men and women should never go to an interview or even to work with wet hair. It's a bad idea. If you don't know how to tie a tie or a bow tie, YouTube is your friend. They have videos for just about anything. Ask a friend if you don't have YouTube, but I'm sure most of you do. Also, shoes. I think it's something that we often overlook. So most of you, if you are driving to an interview, look at your shoes when you get home. A lot of times, if you are, especially if you have a standard, you're gonna have scuffing on the back. And you don't always realize it, but I was in the law school about a week or two ago, and they do on-campus interviews in that building. And I saw a woman, and she was really put together, and I was walking behind her, and she had on black boots with a white stripe, but it wasn't an obvious white stripe, it was oh my gosh, everything's worn off, and it totally threw off her outfit. So again, those little things, if they're scuffed, if you've got dirt on them, take care of it before your interview. Does anyone have any other? Nina, you're making a face. No? No face, okay. Oh, and another, just aside, when I talked about the hair, Nina actually gave me this great advice once. If you're in an interview, don't play with your hair. It's super distracting, and they're going to notice it, and it makes you look less confident, and like you're just nervous, and so don't do it. Okay, we're gonna do another poll. So you've gotten your job, you wore the most amazing outfit to your interview, they loved you, they loved your outfit, your skills, everything. They said, you're hired, so it's your first day of work. We're gonna do poll 3. Which one should you wear? 95% of you said number 2. You guys are way ahead of the game. Why not number 1? Yell it out there. Yes, this is a super fashion-forward outfit. She's wearing all Chanel, which is pretty great. But that's a lot going on when you walk in, right? If someone sees the bracelets and the necklaces and the shoes, and I mean, she's technically wearing a suit, but again, it's a lot. And if you're not sure what the company culture is like, what your employees are like, that's probably just a lot to walk into. What is good about number 2? Yes, she looks stylish, but also like she's having a little bit of fun. She's got a pop of color. She's got closed-toe shoes. Her hair's done. She's got on a blazer. You know, she looks put together, but she's not wearing a stuffy, boring old suit. Number 4, let's go to that poll. Which do you think, Matthew Perry is appropriate, or our J. Crew gentleman?
I can't imagine which one.
I know. I realized how obvious this was after the fact. Let's see. Actually, 17% of you said Matthew Perry. So, so Matthew Perry, from the neck down, he looks great. That's a lovely suit. I mean, his pocket squares may be a little off, but I mean, that's a very well done suit. But from the neck up, someone had a really late night. You probably don't want to walk into your office in an amazing suit or dress or whatever you have on, but have this a hot mess. This, on the other hand, although someone pointed out this morning, which I didn't even notice, this gentleman's not wearing socks. So if you're going, I think it looks really cool, but if it's your first day of work, you probably want to wear socks. But again, it's a little more conservative in terms of how to dress for your first few days at work. I advise you to kind of follow similar guidelines that you would for your interview. Be a little more conservative. As you learn more about the culture and you kind of see what's happening around you, then you can adjust your clothing as needed. Business professionals, the easiest way to go. You can also do this when you've got lunch with your boss or you have a presentation. Again, slightly more conservative, slightly more dressy than you would every day. And again, I'm a big fan of adding color and personality, so whether that's a tie or your shoes or a bag or whatever, you've got a lot of different options. So, number 3, on poll 5, which do you think is a better option for just the average work day? Maybe you don't have a bunch of meetings, you're just going to work. 93% of you said number 1. 7% said number 2. It's a trick. They're both appropriate. It depends on your workplace, but she looks put together. Her chambray shirt's a little wrinkled, which she probably could have ironed that, but it's a fabric that wrinkles pretty easily, so I'm going to forgive her on it. But she looks professional. If someone said, hey, can you pop into my office for a meeting, you wouldn't walk in and look terrible. It's not like they'd be like, oh, you can't go in there. So again, 2 totally different styles, but again, you can wear different variations on this type of work. And also, her skirt is a tiny bit short, but she's wearing tights. So I think that kind of helps. If her skirt was any shorter or she didn't have tights on, it'd be a little questionable. What about poll 6? 67% of you said number 1, and 33% of you said number 2. You are all correct, though. They're both also appropriate. It depends on the office. If you are working in a startup, they're going to be okay with a t-shirt and jeans and a blazer, not even a blazer if there's no meetings, right, Nina? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, this is a little relaxed, but we also are currently living in Colorado, where I have learned things are a little more relaxed. If you're on the East Coast, it might be a little different, but you can get away with wearing a suit and no tie, or you can wear a button down. One thing to note in terms of the buttons, and this is for men and women, you probably don't want to go more than 1, maybe 2 buttons lower. You're good, Nina. But if you've got kind of you can see chest hair, probably not a good idea for the workplace. Also, you want to wear probably an undershirt underneath the shirt if you're just wearing that to work. But again, business casual, this will all be industry or office dependent, so it's really just kind of what the environment is. We have actually some great panelists up here who can speak to their different environments and kind of casual workplace versus very traditional consulting firm or finance division. Also, again, avoid wrinkled clothing or a messy appearance. That ties back into the grooming. Just because it's a more casual day doesn't mean you can't put yourself together a little bit. I would also advise everyone to pay attention to the details in tailoring or lengths of skirts or pants or shirts. I know right now crop tops are really big. You should never, ever, ever wear a crop top to work, ever. The only time I think you would be okay wearing one is if you worked for a crop top retailer and you were presenting your product. But other than that, you should never wear a crop top to your office. Yeah. Yep. And again, skirts, a lot of people say different things, but the old rule is if it's below or if it's above the end of your fingertips, it's too short. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but knee length or just above the knee is probably a good space. So moving on to a casual Friday. Poll number 7. Would 1 or 2 be a more appropriate? 95% of you said option number 2. This is one of I think he's graduated, hasn't he? One of the former Daniel students. This is a gentleman during, I believe, Milan Fashion Week. What about this is not great? If you're just going to a casual Friday at an office downtown Denver. Okay. Kind of looks a little undone, like maybe he ran out of the house because he forgot something. The pleats are also a little weird. I'm not sure which direction they're going. The t-shirt, you can wear a t-shirt, I think, in certain spaces, but again, it's not, it looks super messy. Whereas this, you know, he's got on jeans, but they're not wrinkled and they are cuffed nicely and they fit, and he's got on a collared shirt and a sweater and his shoes aren't scuffed. So again, it's all about kind of those little things that make it okay. If he had been maybe a little more put together, I probably would not have put him on this. So poll 8. This is the last poll, I promise. 1 or 2? Okay, 77% of you said number 2, which is correct. You've passed. Why not this one? Yes, I know that you can buy very expensive jeans now that are pre-ripped and look really cool and cost $400. That's awesome, but don't wear them to work because it just, even if they cost $400, it looks really, really messy. Everything else is actually probably fine. You could get away with that, but just have on jeans that aren't ripped or a different pair of pants altogether. So, Casual Fridays, you always have to be professional. You can be casual, but that does not mean messy, and that does not mean unprofessional. Another thing, tights aren't pants. If you're wearing tights and a shirt that comes down to here, you need to go back inside and put on pants or a skirt. I used to say no leggings, but I actually, in thinking about it, I actually do wear leggings to work. They're not Lululemon. They are actual like leggings that are meant to look like pants, and I wear like a tunic or something that's a little longer, so it's not unprofessional. But I think, again, when you're living here in particular, you can have a little bit more leeway with what is considered a faux pas and what is not. But generally, athleisure should never be worn to work. It's great that you went to a bar class before you went to work, but bring a change of clothes. And even though it's a casual day, you should still iron your shirts, dresses, pants, whatever it is. Avoid frayed clothing. I know sometimes things, as you've worn them and you love them, they'll get like little bits of fray, but don't wear them to your work. And again, pay attention to your shoes. Don't wear like your old running shoes just because it's Friday. It still looks really unprofessional. I don't care that they're right by the door before you leave for the house and you're running really late. Always have a change of shoes at work.
Even your new running shoes.
Even your new running shoes.
Don't wear running shoes at all. That's like the number one faux pas for men. Running shoes and shorts should not be worn into the workplace.
Just anything you wear to a gym, don't wear to the office. Anything you exercise in or hike, just don't. It's just to have different drawers. They're not meant for work, ever.
Excellent. That's excellent advice. So in terms of like having maybe a networking event or an after work something or other, you don't need to dress up like crazy, like no tuxes for guys, no, you don't need a floor length gown unless you've been invited to a work sponsored black tie gala. Just maybe add a few accessories, so it could be a fun pop of jewelry, or change your shoes, or change up your tie if you're a man and you have on a collared shirt. Maybe just throw a blazer or a jacket on over it. Just kind of make it transitional, but you don't have to go home and, put on something super fancy. Also, I would advise you to not wear clothes you would wear when you're going out on Saturday night. A fabric is a dead giveaway of something that is worn when you're going out on Saturday versus what you should wear to an event. Nothing low cut, nothing super short, no over the knee boots. You're still wanting to look professional and you're still engaging with people that you work with, so you still want to be representing yourself in a good light, selling your brand in a way that will help you long term. So now we'll actually get into the better part, if you ask me, because we're going to actually talk to our panelists who can give really great feedback from their experiences. So I'm going to actually have everyone introduce themselves.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, because you work closer.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, it's actually Professor Cunningham, and I am in the marketing department, but prior to my tenure at DU in the marketing department, I was in industry for 18 years in sales, operations, and marketing. So that's a little bit about my background. It is definitely different in corporate America than most of what you will see here in an academic setting. So You're going to have to up your game a lot.
We met earlier. My name's Matt Griffin. I'm with Transamerica. Transamerica is not the normal in corporate America. We are very casual, probably a little less than business casual. However, we have the opportunity to wear t-shirts to work. I don't think I've ever worn one, not even on a Friday. I wear blazers in the fall and definitely no running shoes. But most companies, especially in financial services, it's a little bit more business versus casual.
Hi, I'm Nina Sharma. I run Project Excite, which is the university's entrepreneurship program. My background, I worked in some really big nonprofits in New York, which were pretty conservative, so I did have to wear pretty much business attire. Worked in the private sector as well, where it didn't, when I was facing clients, you were definitely in a jacket or a dress or always dressed up. Academia, totally different. The startup world, even more different. Like hoodies are dressed up. I would not err on the side of that, and I would never go in thinking that. It's always better, and I'm probably digressing a little bit, but it's always better to be the more overdressed or professionally dressed person in the room than like the sloppy one in the room. So if you're not sure, like err on the side of dressed up.
Good afternoon. My name's Chris Hewen, and I'm a professor in the School of Finance. And I would just want to piggyback on what you just said. Like, you want to be in the top half of the best dressed people. I think it's actually relatively easy for men. My number one tip, if you can just wear nice shoes, that already puts you right there, if not in the top half, but in the top 25% of men. And you have to buy shoes and actually clean them. Don't just throw them aside. I mean, make sure that they're looking good, no scuffs like you mentioned earlier, and treat your clothes as an investment. I mean, admittedly, I'm a finance professor, so I see everything as an investment, but you really need to kind of focus on the life of the product and not just try and buy the cheapest one that's just going to last you a year.
To elaborate on that, no stains. Stains are big. No holes, rips, cuts, anything like that.
Awesome. So we have a question to kind of start off the discussion, but if you want to submit questions via Slido, we'll kind of be throwing those out there as well. So no need to yell them out, but you can certainly type them in. So our first question is, how can I dress professionally and integrate work-appropriate clothing on a budget? So I'm going to let the panelists kind of take over first, and then I'll maybe add on as needed.
The dress I'm wearing is from Target. It costs $24.99.
I was going to say 2 words, Nordstrom Rack.
Yeah. Honestly, like I've been working. I'm 40 years old. I still will buy things at Target. It's okay. Or at or at Nordstrom Rack. Or sometimes I'll spend $400 on a dress, and that's okay too. But my wardrobe is made up of all sorts of things, and I didn't really think about it today. I just thought, oh, I like that dress. I haven't worn it in a while, but it costs $25. So you can look super appropriate. Like, I can wear this to go out after work. I can wear this at work. I can wear it to teach in a million situations, and it's fine. You don't have to break the bank.
Nope.
It's probably going to last me more than a year. It's not going to just be 1 year. But yeah, I don't think you have to break the bank. I think there's lots of places. Mall stores are great, right? So every big department store has a sale rack. Nordstrom Rack is amazing. Honestly, living in New York, like, rent cost so much money that you couldn't really afford much of anything, but you had to look appropriate. So places like the Gap were great for right out of college. There's always appropriate looking, and the sale rack at Banana Republic. Never buy anything full price at Banana because it's gonna go on sale. The sale rack at Banana is usually a really, really great place to shop if you're on a budget and looking for work-appropriate attire.
Right, so I'm wearing a suit from Banana Republic. I would guess it cost $150. Maybe a little more, but not much. But one of the tricks you have to do is actually get it altered, right? I mean, you can't just buy something at a chain store and have the sleeves too long. I mean, you really actually need to get it fit appropriately. So that'll take a little extra money. But you're totally right about Gap and Banana Republic. You should never pay full price. In fact, I'm gonna get you tons of money off right now. Here's the trick. First, wait for the sale. Gap and Banana Republic, they run 50% off sales like every other day. 2, go online and buy it. You can start at Rakuten. Do you all know this website? It's a click-through site. So you start at Rakuten and type in Banana Republic. That gives you an extra 5 to 10% off on top of the 50% off. Then you get the credit card. Banana Republic's currently running a 20% off if you actually charge it to the credit card. So you add all that up. and
Just
it's-
pay off the credit card.
It's like they're almost paying you to wear the clothes, I think.
I convinced myself of that when I was 22 years old, and then I had an enormous amount of credit card debt.
No.
So pay off their credit card.
I totally
advice.
agree. Credit cards are, you don't want to have too many. I'm just saying that this is one where I actually feel like that it'll save you money ultimately.
What you want to think about in general, I'm guessing you guys are pretty savvy shoppers, whether it's online or in-store, but the alterations piece is key. But think of three things. Think simple, quality, and appropriate, right? It doesn't matter where you get your stuff, if it's Target or if it's Banana Republic, you guys know where to go. But simple, quality, and appropriate. And so the appropriate piece, you have to figure that out. You have to go and see what people are wearing before your interview. Go and see their office and see what they're wearing. Go online and see what they're wearing. Quality doesn't have to cost a lot of money if you put it together and you get it tailored, but this requires you thinking ahead and planning, right? So don't think you can go out the night before maybe and put something together. And keep things simple. There was a slide up about Chanel, and Coco Chanel is famous for saying, before you walk out the door, take one item off. You don't want people to remember you for what you were wearing. You want them to remember you for what you said and how you impress them, right? You don't, like the perfume, you don't want that lingering, wow, I can't believe that person wore those red shoes, or those shoes with the purple shoelaces, or whatever the case may be.
I think that's such a good point. When I remember 22, living in New York, broke, but our biggest goal, my friends and I would talk about this all the time, is just to be under the radar. Like, dress appropriately enough that you don't stand out at all. You don't look underdressed, but like, no one's gonna comment on what you're wearing, right? If you're on a budget, it's sometimes super hard to figure out what to wear and how to look appropriate. Just go for under the radar. Be noticed when you're going out at night. Be noticed on your weekends. Don't worry about being noticed at work. Be noticed for your brain and what you're contributing, but don't think about your clothes being part of that.
Yeah, neutral colors,
Black is great.
gray.
So something that came up in the earlier class, we talked a little bit about, let's say you wanted to buy new items, like you don't need to go buy a whole new wardrobe. Something that's really popular is a capsule collection. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but if you Pinterest capsule collection, it's going to show you maybe these are the key pieces you should have for your work wardrobe. And it shows you how to kind of pair them with other things. It's all based on something that's classic. You can splurge on something that's slightly higher quality if you want it to last you 20 years, but again, pay off your credit cards. You can add in like trendy items as needed, but you don't need to be buying new things every season, even though that's what we've been taught since we were children. Back to school clothing, I still am guilty. I'm like, it's September, I need to buy new things. But you don't have to do that. Also, there's some really cool secondhand options. I know for sustainability reasons, that's a great idea. I actually often go to this website. It's called threadup.com, and you can get anything from Target clothes to Chanel. You can get it in brand new clothing that still has the tags on it for like a third of the price. You can get, gently used, like it'll tell you like if there's a stain or if there's an accessory missing. So there are ways you can do it that won't break the bank completely.
There's also close to campus, I don't think they have men's clothing either place, but there's Common Ground? No, Common Threads on South Pearl. It's a consignment store. There's great stuff there. Really, really great, like name brand stuff at 70% off. And then Rags it's right next to the ski and snowboard place in Cherry Creek. What is that place
Christie's?
called? It's right next to Christie's in Cherry Creek. It's a place called Rags Consignment, which is also really excellent women's clothing, all in great condition, all at like massively discounted prices.
And one other thing we were chatting about earlier in terms of like, if you're gonna splurge on something like a really good pair of shoes, take care of them. I also sometimes think of it in terms of cost per wear. So I might buy a nice pair of heels, but if I know I'm going to wear them consistently for the next 5 years and they're classic, actually you can justify the price. Sometimes I think I'm just rationalizing my purchase, but in terms of like long-term, like if you want to invest in something, do it in something that you can actually continue to wear if you keep if you keep it in good condition. So we've got some other really good questions. Let's see. How can men express themselves even though conventional suits are reserved and conservative and standardized?
I'm gonna look at you guys.
Yeah, it is a challenge for sure. And I think that there are a number of ways that you can do it. I mean, first of all, you can wear slightly funky stocks. I mean, in terms of just a little out there, that's obviously going to play better in Silicon Valley or in the startup crowd. It's not going to play well in banking. So you can have sort of those staples like a tie, but just add a little different design, a little color to spice it up. I encourage you to figure out the checklist in your office. Like my personal checklist is if I come to work, I'm almost always in a button-down shirt. If you see me outside of work, I will never wear a button-down shirt. I always wear a shirt with long sleeves. That's a rule that's controversial, but in a lot of offices, even if the shirt's buttoned down, it's not okay for men to wear short sleeve dress shirts. The long sleeve is preferred. But you need to figure out sort of the checklist, the requirements that you're going to have in your office, and then make sure you satisfy those, and then try and spice it up a little bit with some accessories like nice pair of shoes, tie, cool socks.
And I'd say buy like modern fit or slim fit, and then also wrinkle resistance maybe, something that you don't need to spend a lot of time on. And then also just be confident in whatever you wear. You should be fine.
Absolutely. This one says, do I have to wear tights or pantyhose with a skirt or a dress?
If it's short, I think that's actually how you get around that. If your skirt's shorter than the length of your fingertips, wear tights. I mean, I'm obviously not wearing them today. It's also about 75 degrees out. I'm also on a college campus. It's a little bit different, but it depends where you are, right? Like if you're going to a bank, wear tights pretty much all the time. If it's a little bit more casual, not necessarily. If it's summer, probably not. Again, it kind of depends. I have friends who worked in finance in New York, and if they wore a skirt, they wore tights all the time.
I personally am not a fan of pantyhose. I'm not a member of the royal family, so
They really do.
but they have to wear them. It doesn't matter if it's 90 degrees in the summer. I think, if you don't want to wear them, keep your skirt at a decent length. The winter, I wear them all the time. They're great. But again, it's err on the side of conservative until you know what your office culture is. If all the women are going without tights, then you probably don't need them. Also, it's your own comfort level, whatever you are most comfortable in.
Sometimes I find that tights actually make my clothes fit better, too. Like your skirt hangs better, and it just right? I'm looking at women in skirts right now, right? In the winter you wear, right, none of us are wearing tights right now, but if I'm wearing like a pencil skirt or something, just things fall better, hang better on your body.
Spanx does that too. You're too young for that. Someone asked, could it be beneficial to wear something that stands out during your interview? So a bright blazer, that's something like a unique tie or pocket square. I can't speak to the business sector, so I'm going to let all of you take care of that one.
I wouldn't try to say stand out. Try to look sharp and well put together.
That's right. Especially in an initial interview, I wouldn't try and rock the boat with standing out.
Unless it's a super creative field, if you're in advertising and you want a little bit more push, a little bit more edge. Are pocket squares, is that something that's acceptable in the finance industry? I mean, I know even a lot of men in finance do not wear suits anymore.
Right. President Obama is famous for breaking that tie barrier. I mean, he stopped wearing a tie to some casual events. And I think that kind of symbolizes the younger generation, right? He was a younger president, and pocket squares, I don't own any, and I think that unless you're in an upper echelon investment bank, you probably don't need to either.
I've seen some guys wear them just for like to be playful or have there be a pop of color or something kind of fun and quirky.
Yeah, I agree.
Also with first interviews, and you might be able, in Colorado at least, you can overdress, especially in the startup world, and maybe for a app dev gaming company, you don't want to go in a pinstripe suit with a tie. In my opinion, you could be overdressed. So that'd be standing out.
Like anything, know your audience. Though I would say I have a friend who always wears, she tends to wear like bright blue, not like a Like this gentleman's in a royal blue shirt. Sorry to make everybody turn and look at you, but she always wears this like brighter than navy blue that she wears because she thinks that it actually helps people remember who she is, which I love. I think that's actually really great. She has like a signature color that she always wears, and I pointed it out, and she's like, that's on purpose. It's not just because I like the color. It's because people remember me because I'm in it. So I think if you have something like that, it takes a while to develop, and it might not be the best for your first interview, but it's definitely fine to wear color.
I do think in Colorado, one of the biggest things I hear from students is that they go in an interview overdressed. So I don't know what career services would advise. You do want to be in the upper 50%. I really like that. You don't have to be the dressiest person. And I think it's harder for men because if you dress up, it's obvious, right? You have a tie on and a suit, and you walk in and no one else is in a suit and tie. For women, we can just wear a dress and throw a sweater over it, and we can go, it kind of flexes. So I think it's really difficult for men. I'm not sure what the best advice is, but I actually think it's a lot harder for men for interviews and being in that sweet spot. I'm not sure.
I think, but like you said, do your research. Like,
Right.
find out what do people wear. You can probably dig around and find pictures online of an event or something at their office. Most companies have, pictures of people working in their offices.
For guys, at the very least, bring a sport coat. Just even if it's on a suit, bring a sport coat. You can always take it off.
Yeah, in your office, you can keep a jacket or a blazer, 1 or 2 pairs of shoes that if you need to put on heels. One thing that came up this morning was that you don't have to wear your heels to get to and from work. That's not necessary. You can still be professional and wear flats, or if it's snowing out, wear boots, and just have the shoes that go with your outfit in your bag or at the office so that you can change. There's no need to ever be uncomfortable. So that's another thing too. If you have a small stockpile of items kind of hidden away in your office, you can always turn to them if you need to. So for women, pants versus skirts, which one's better?
Which one do you like more? I don't know. I might have another opinion, but I think they're both generally appropriate in any situation.
I agree completely. For a long time, I refused. I would only wear dresses and skirts. That's all I would wear. And then a couple years ago, I was like, I actually kind of like pants. So now I wear both. But I mean, I don't think that there's one or the other that's good or bad. It's whatever you're most comfortable in, as long as you're not, again, wearing something that is insanely short. Like, sit down in your outfit. This is actually one key tip for all of you. When you're trying on clothes, or whether it's at home or in your friend's closet or at a department store, sit down in what you are wearing, because fabric can do weird things when you sit down. You want to be able to breathe. You don't want it to bunch up kind of weird. You're going to be spending a lot of your time sitting, so make sure that that's one just little thing you do, because you don't want to have to sit through an 8 or 9 hour workday and be really uncomfortable because you didn't sit down first. So we also got a question: how can a person who identifies as non-binary wear a mix and still be professional? Anyone have?
I don't know, but I do think what you go back to, and if you and I teach the sales class, and this is based on research: simple, appropriate, and quality. And if you have a fluid gender and you think about that and just stick to those rules and think about what feels appropriate, what's appropriate in the office, I think that you can be neutral enough, and you can find ways to express yourself and fit in or whatever's appropriate with your work environment. I think it's irrelevant if it's one way or the other. I think it's okay as long as you are following those general guidelines, and I think you should be okay.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. So I suspect some of you know that there's a popular TV show called Billions, and this is actually the running theme through Billions about how a woman tries to dress while she's running a hedge fund. So I don't have the easy answers, but I know that this has generated a lot of publicity and debate about the issue, and it's really challenging.
Yeah.
So watch Billions, get some insights.
I agree. I think you all made excellent points. What's the difference between business casual and business professional?
Business professional, I'd say, is more suit, tie. Casuals, undone, jeans. nice jeans.
Yeah, I think for a woman, I think what I'm wearing is probably business casual. If I was wearing a more tailored dress or something that was, didn't like ride up when I sat down, that would be more business professional, wearing tights, wearing heels, accessorizing. I wore 0 accessories today accidentally, so I'm pretty underdressed. But yeah, I think that probably just wearing a more, you could go the traditional suit route. I hate suits, but I love blazers. I hate suits. But I do think that so I will often wear jeans and a blazer and just like a plain t-shirt underneath. That's pretty business casual. Business professional would be like with a skirt or with a blazer over a dress.
Or a cardigan, because I hate blazers.
Yeah.
So this is what I would consider, like, for me to be my business professional. I don't dress like this most days. This was like my Mad Men outfit. Like, I'm going to put on my super professional dress for this, my tweed. But honestly, like, I wear dresses a lot, but they're usually a little more casual, and I just throw on a sweater. I've never worn a blazer to work, ever. They make fun of me for it all the time. I'm thinking about trying one, so I'm being kind of taken to the other side.
We had like a 20-minute conversation about just trying a blazer yesterday.
We did. It was actually really fun.
There's some sweater blazers you might
Yes.
want.
That's what I'm doing. I'm going to do a sweater blazer. I digress.
Sweater blazer.
It's on trend.
What about for women in terms of open-toed shoes? What do you think? Is that appropriate in the workplace?
Summertime. And it depends on your office. Again, if I'm working in a bank, I'm probably, I don't know. Actually, I have no idea, right? Colorado is relatively casual. Depends on the culture of your office. I wore open-toed shoes all summer, so.
I did as well.
I think you have to be careful. So we are in Colorado, but think about if you're going to wear your Birks. Remember always that you're making an impression on people and you're signaling to people. So I think if you keep that in mind and you think about what's the signal that I want to send, is that Birks, if that's appropriate and you're in a startup and everyone's in shorts and t-shirts, or you're that person that can pull that off. But just remember that you're signaling to people with what you wear.
Right, not all open-toed shoes are created equal, right? Like I have sandals that are really pretty silver and gold sandals that I can wear to work and feel totally appropriate. I also have Birkenstocks that I don't wear to work. So, yeah.
Exactly.
And if you're going to wear open-toed shoes, please get a pedicure. I know that
Yeah.
sounds really weird, but and I would
And your
also,
nails.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I never get manicures, but
Well,
I keep them manicured.
But if you're going to wear nail polish,
Yeah.
You don't want it super chipped. Also, the talon thing,
Yeah.
like, it's cool, but A, you can't type, and B, it's going to distract from everyone you're interacting with, because they're going to be looking at your hands, wondering how you're doing anything, not listening to what you're saying.
I would also say for men, open-toed shoes are never appropriate at work, ever.
Yeah,
Ever.
no
Literally
Birkenstocks
ever.
or hacky sacks.
Like never.
Never.
Like they're maybe appropriate when you're like camping or on a beach,
Maybe.
but that's about it. Men's toes should stay covered.
Does anyone have any other parting thoughts you want to make sure they walk away with?
One thing I read that I always tell my female students is women who wear makeup make more money. That's what the research shows. So I don't know if you came across that on your research, and I was curious to ask you if you
I
saw that.
actually hadn't, but I mean, I know for me, I feel a little more put together when I put on makeup. So on the weekends, I don't wear it. But if I'm coming to work, it's kind of like I'm putting on like my gear for the day. I'm ready. It's okay, I'm in my professional mode. I can walk out the door. I'm ready. I can kind of encounter anything and be okay with it. I think I'd be nervous if I didn't have my makeup on.
Did you guys, anyone go to Startup Week, Denver Startup Week 2 weeks ago? Okay, next year you guys should all go.
It's
But
really fun.
so Lindsey Vaughn, who's a former professional skier, launched a makeup brand. And I was kind of like, oh, a makeup brand, how original. And then I heard her talk about it, right? It's like she wants women to be able to like, look, I am going out to conquer the world. This is my war paint. This is not me trying to cover up any flaws. This is me feeling like my absolute best self. And I get it. Like my coworker sitting in the front row, we were talking about this yesterday. I was like, I feel underdressed, but wait, I'm gonna put on lipstick. And I literally put on just lipstick. It took me 2 seconds, and she's like, you're a totally different person. Like, you are dressed up now. And it makes such a difference. It's not like I wear full face makeup every day, but a little mascara and a little lipstick goes a long, long way.
Well, on that note, thank you so much. It was great having you. And if you have questions, let us know.